Sarah and Mohammed, ready to talk? We are excited about this conversation and hoping to stay on topic. We'll see what happens, but really excited to talk about autism and therapies. And our stories are very different. Mohammed, you were diagnosed when you were an adult, and so you had no therapies as a child. And our experience was our son being diagnosed at 1.5 years old, which is very young for a formal diagnosis, but he did get a formal diagnosis. And we were encouraged to jump into therapies. And one of the therapies that we were offered was ABA therapy, which is applied behavior analysis. And this is 12 years ago, 11 years ago that we began that. So it was a bit of a time ago. But I'd love to begin with you sharing kind of your perspective of ABA, what you have heard about it, what you know about it.
Okay, so yeah, personally, I didn't have any ABA or any treatments, as you said, but I've met some people here in Cape Town who have done this and who have spoken to a lot of people who are doing this kind of therapy, and none of them like it. And from what I've read from the reports that you sent me about your son, was that he had to do certain things that the neurotypical world sees as socially correct behavior. Like if someone say hello, you must respond and say hello, how are you, and fine, thank you. You know, this robotic stuff. To me, that's called robotic stuff. So I think, like I said to you earlier, is that to me, it looks like a circus animal that's just doing what the world thinks is correct. But the circle animal is a wild animal, should remain a wild animal. I think a neurodivergent kid should remain a neurodivergent kid. Doesn't need to do all these social things correctly. It's as if that once he could do these kind of things, they said he's not autistic anymore, which to me is absolute absurd. Because like I spoke about in many other videos or other places, autism is not being correct behavior, is being different. That's my opinion. So I'm not
Mm,
for that kind of therapy at all.
yeah. Yeah, when we started it, I didn't know anything against it. It was recommended to us, and really what it wasn't a classic ABA. So it was a woman who came into our home and basically kind of made targeted goals, and then we would slowly work to those goals. If I can remember, one of them was like holding a pencil. One of them was having a shoe on. He wouldn't put shoes on. So I remember very vividly, like putting his shoes on, holding them on for 10 seconds. He would scream, and then we'd take them off, and he'd get a reward. And so it's
Ah,
kind of like you're slowly
yes,
working
and that
towards these
yeah,
things.
that is exactly to me how they do with animals. Like he screams, and I think it's no need to, and he's just gonna do it because he doesn't want to have that negative feeling. I think I
Right.
also went through similar stuff like that. Like in you said you read part of my book. Like I had to sit in these kind of religious meetings where everybody's singing loud and smell and everything, and it was horrible, but I had to do it because if I don't, they would hit you or some crap like this, and you're the
Mm,
bad one, you know what's wrong with you, God is gonna punish you, all that kind of crap. So I don't think that is a good way of, scare tactics. And you have to
mm.
do it because that, and then it gives also the wrong thing because the kid, like, would be like, how do you say, what's the word now? Like, get annoyed. It'd be like, okay, that is something they didn't want, and I'm just doing it, okay? But as soon as they become adult and their own person, they'll just reject it.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Right.
Is this something that you can see with your kitty that's happening or not?
I can see both sides. So I can see the positives and the negatives very clearly, which is why I like talking about it because I do think we would do it differently if we were going back. At the time, we wanted him to learn how to wear shoes. We wanted him to learn how to speak. We wanted him to learn how to eating meat was a really difficult thing. So we wanted to push him to do these things. And I think that was a goal. It wasn't a goal to make him not autistic. That wasn't the goal. The goal was just for him to learn behaviors that would make him be able to tolerate the world around him, to go to school, and most of all, to make friends. A goal of mine always was that I felt that God told me that he was fearfully and wonderfully made. So there's nothing wrong with him, but that he was made to love people and to be loved. So it was never, we have a broken kid that we're trying to make right. It was, we're having a kid who is struggling to tolerate these things. And we feel that if he could learn to tolerate them, then he would learn to have relationships and enjoy the world. It's interesting hearing even myself say that because I see the weaknesses in that argument. Because you're still holding a shoe on for 10 seconds while he screams, right? Or you're still sitting at the dinner table while he gags and sometimes vomits up food, and you say you have to keep eating. Now my son can sit at any dinner table and eat food. My son can wear any type of shoe, although he prefers to, wear a certain kind of shoe. He prefers to wear a certain kind of clothing. So we kind of pushed him to be able to tolerate anything. And I'm glad for that. I mean, this year he's grade 7. He's a prefect. He loves school, enjoys being at school. He can tolerate things that he doesn't like. He can say, "This is what I do like." So even last night, everything I cook almost, he says, "Can I put it in a wrap?" He wants everything in a wrap. And so I said, "No, tonight you can't have a wrap." Some nights I say, "You can have a wrap." So he's able now to say, "I like this. I don't like this. I want to wear these clothes. I don't want to wear these clothes." Here's a great example. We were in America for 3 weeks recently, and we have to go. We're fundraising for our NGO and for our life when we're there. So we have to go to people's houses. We're driving all around. People are coming to see us for hours and hours and hours. This time, I've never seen him do it, but he would greet everyone and he would sit there for 5 minutes and then he'd just be gone. He didn't ask permission. Because he knew he wasn't doing anything naughty, but he would just go be by himself and he'd be on his phone or he'd play video games, and he just was happy to say hello and then to choose to exit the situation. And that's what I'm seeing now is a young man, he's 13, who is able to articulate, "I like this, I don't like this. I want to go to this place, I don't want to go to this place." Even recently this weekend, we had a tap competition for my daughter. We had to drive an hour and a half and sit there forever and then watch this tap competition. And he was going to go with us, like tap dancing. He was going to go with us. And then he said, "Oh, wait, Brandon's invited me over to spend the night. Can I do that?" And so we wanted him to go with us, but he didn't really want to go. He could have tolerated sitting in her tap performance, which slowly we helped him to learn to sit and watch his sister perform, but he didn't want to. So we give him choices now, which I think is helpful. But here is where I think it didn't help him. And I think you could speak to this too. And I think this is where um, you had to have a leg up on a child or an adult who had to go through ABA. What I fear is that my son is always trying to get like the gold star, trying to check up off what adult wants of him. So he grew up with adults saying, "You need to speak like this, you need to hold your shoe on like this, you need to eat your food like this." And all these adults would then cheer, "Okay, good, you did it right." And I fear that he looks to adults to tell him what is right and wrong. And so we've had a few situations in school this year where he made a mistake in school and his teacher called him out, who's actually a friend of ours. He's in grade 7, and he cried in class, or he would come home and cry about it at home because he felt so much shame because he made a mistake in front of the adult. He didn't get that check that he was looking for. And so I fear that there is an anxiety that has been created. Now, I have anxiety as well. I have diagnosed anxiety, and maybe he has it already in his, motor neurons. It's already in his brain. I worry that the ABA therapy actually created more anxiety because he's always looking at the world to say if he's right or wrong. Whereas when I'm reading your story, I'm seeing you with your mother and your mother affirming you a lot more. At times you had to go to church or you had to go to the doctor when you had something go wrong, but your mom really affirmed what you wanted to experience in the world a lot more than we did for our son as a child, I think. And I worry that he will look to his superiors to make him give him, tell him if he's right or wrong. And that will create shame and create anxiety. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Maybe, what you think and maybe what you are free from, that you didn't have to do that. So then you just are free to be yourself. How do you feel about kind of those thoughts?
Um, just to go back first, I think there are definitely stuff that every human must learn. And just because you're neurodivergent doesn't excuse you from doing certain things. I always use this stupid example that I have to learn to shit in the toilet. I can't just shit in the dining room. So,
Yep.
so these kind of things my parents
Yep.
obviously did. But how to teach anyone? I mean, like each kid,
Mm,
you have to teach them according in a different way. It's your kid. You
yeah.
want a good thing for them. And even
Yeah.
me, I definitely made mistakes with my kids. It's difficult, like to get it correct. However, so yeah, I think that thing that you were saying, the shame thing, for me, it would have been like I would have, because I had this background of my mother that was my support, as you see in the book. Like my mother was okay with me. I mean, I could do a lot of stuff. However, what happened was that there was the rest of the world, okay, and with the rest of the world, I wasn't accepted, and
Mm,
that caused for me, not like this kind of shame thing that you're talking about
mm,
that that he has now, that he's kind of what's that you said he doesn't he feels so bad that he has to be approved by the adults. Whereas I also have that, but from the rest, I didn't have it luckily from my mother and father. I didn't
mm.
need to like for them. That was my safe spot. Like if the rest was stupid, I would just go to them, and I knew
Yeah.
they would be logical. So but I wouldn't know actually. It's difficult. What is the best solution? So I think to get the best solution is just to kind of look at all the different options and try. That's just
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah,
So
a mix of it all. I
yeah,
think you're right. And I think my son felt safe with me, probably more than my husband. My husband is more neurotypical and he's more, he was the one that said, you have to sit at the kitchen table and eat. And my son would gag. But then eventually my son started to eat chicken. He started to eat meat. And now he's an athlete. He plays soccer all day, every day. He needs nutrients. So there are, as you said, even in your book, you talk about yelling at someone to come wipe your bum on the toilet. I mean, I thought my son was never going to wipe his own bum, but eventually we had to teach him that even though you want us to wipe your bum, you have to do it yourself. So there is a tension
yeah,
of teaching kids to do something. And I think our ABA was very, very gentle and it was mixed in with other things like, holding a pencil. Obviously, we knew he didn't want to hold a pencil, but he would have to learn how to. So it was a mix of ABA, but really it was occupational therapy, right? And like soccer, we never forced him to play sports. We were trying to get his gross motor skills better because didn't have balance, and so we'd play do activities outside, but it was never like you have to play sports. But I've talked to another parent actually. We have a good friend who we met when my son was really young, and they had a daughter who was older who had all same story as ours. So I know it sounds unique, but same story as ours, had moderate autism, did a lot of therapy, and then lost the diagnosis at about age 5 or 6. And that's how we say lose the diagnosis, not cured. And I've talked with them about ABA therapy, and they have the same idea of that they would do it differently. And I think part of it is, and this is a part that I grieve for myself. I mean, it's that I didn't know anything about autism. So I knew that my son was fearfully and wonderfully made, but I was fearful that my son would never talk. I was fearful that my son would never have friends. I was fearful that my son wouldn't say I love you. And I was ignorant to what autism was and what it wasn't. And now I'm not ignorant. And now, I've talked to you about this. My one of my best friends is autistic and a brilliant woman, and I love neurodiversity and I embrace it. I think there's nothing wrong with neurodiversity. There's a great book called Neurotribes that talks about the history of autism and why we've seen it wrong for so long. But I think back then I had a fear about it, and I had a fear with this life, and some of it was religious. I felt like we were called to serve people. We started an NGO. I lived on the church property. We had people coming in and our house all the time. My son couldn't tolerate it, and I felt this tension of God. We're here to serve people, and yet my son can't tolerate this. And I had to pull back on all this ministry and kind of just become my son's counselor. And there was a tension of just accepting him as he was. And so I don't berate myself with guilt and shame, but I recognize that as an adult, as a parent of my young son, I didn't know what I know now. And now I do see him very differently. And now I do see a very gifted young boy, like you always were, very gifted, very intellectual, whose brain just worked different and has different preferences and has different needs in the world. And I think as I go on now, I try to help him to articulate what he needs and to, ask for what he needs. But if you do ABA therapy for a long time, there are some things that are just locked into you. And I do see that at times. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I go both and.
okay. So you say that you would do things differently. What like can you give some examples that what you would do differently now?
I think that I would teach people, which I did do a lot of, but empower the people that I did let him be around to go slower and to tolerate situations as he was ready. And we did this sometimes. For instance, we for a while we worked at a church, but then we visited this other church in Mitchell's Plain for years. We would go back and forth, but we never took my son. He would go to a neighbor's house in Ocean View in our community. They loved him. They would take him for the morning. He would watch movies with them and eat candy. And eventually the church, like the children's church, because they had like a church just for kids there, they came and said, we really want Keller to be here. We don't like that, we're not forcing you, but we would love to learn how to support Keller. And even his preschool was the same way. They were like, bring him. We want to learn how to support him. And so I think I would fight harder for not to not try to make my son fit in environments, but help people learn how to tolerate him and help him grow and to seek out what he needs. Um, I think that would be a big part. And I think I would try to just help him speak about what his issues were. Like for instance, if I see now like maybe even in that situation he gets called out by a teacher, he might not get upset in the moment, but he will always come home and tell me about a situation. Or if a friend is mean to him, he will come home and tell me about that situation. I think what I would love to help connect the dots more when he was little, that I think makes it hard now, is to explain why he can't tolerate something, explain why something hurts his feelings, explain why something is hard in the moment, rather than only later can he articulate why he doesn't like it. Because he was just
Yeah.
forced to eat chicken. He was just forced to hold the pencil. And so now he's in school and the teacher says, we have to sit down and stop talking right now. You're naughty. And he is frozen because he doesn't know how in the moment to articulate how he feels.
Mm.
And I can relate to that too. I don't also, I get frozen too and feel like I'm wrong rather than, okay, well, actually, could we do it this third way? Or could I, do it tomorrow? Do you know what I mean?
Is he does he mostly feel that he's wrong? Is that his first impulse? And like at what point does he see that he was not wrong? And sometimes
Good
does he
question.
always like does he stand up for himself? Like eventually does he stand up for himself, or is he always just coming to you and complaining to you, but not really standing up to himself?
I think he's learning. I think in the moment, sometimes he thinks he's wrong, or sometimes he knows that person is being mean or too harsh. He's also very sensitive. So, rejection sensitive dysphoria is a huge part of his neurodiverse profile. So, when someone is harsh to him, he feels it very, very strongly immediately. Either sometimes he thinks he's wrong, sometimes he just thinks that person is really mean and he just kind of freezes in that feeling and he can't process it. So it's not always that he thinks he's wrong. It's also this person is terrible, but then he can't bring in the information because he also had these therapists who talk so nicely. And Keller, will you try this? And Keller, no. And so then he also has struggles when someone, I don't want him to get to also to have a boss one day when he's 30 and his boss says, you failed. If he failed and he can't take it because he can't take in input differently than how he needs it to come in. But I think he's slowly starting to, in these situations, because we talk about it all the time, he's slowly starting to learn that he can speak up. And then we do talk with his teachers when it's appropriate and, ask them, could you say it this way? Or do you think, I think his teachers know that he has ADHD. They know that he's sensitive and they're trying to meet him in the middle, help him grow and speak for himself, but also help him to be able to tolerate that harshness. And that's one thing that if anyone's watching and they have kids and they're wondering what they do with kids, I would just say the more that you can get adults that can help build that bridge, that can see that the child is struggling to adjust to that feeling, or that the child is sensitive, or the child can't tolerate. How can you create smaller steps? How can that adult kind of come here? Not just saying that they give in, oh, fine, you don't have to do the math homework, you don't have to eat chicken, but more adults that could kind of meet them in the middle, and that you
Yeah.
can explain that to. And I think that's one thing is we told people about the diagnosis all the time. And so we were just kind of always like, we need your help. Can you help us? Can you help Keller to get there? And I think that did serve him, is that he had a lot of people that were trying to help him grow. And so we just talked about it. But I think he's learning as time goes on how to tolerate it more. And part of it's that he has a real desire. He's 13, so he wants to be accepted. So he doesn't want to cry in the classroom. He doesn't want to cry when someone shouts at him on the soccer field. And so I think that's also slowly motivating him to learn how to stick up for himself.
Mm.
Which I'm
So
sure you also learned,
yeah,
as you went on in
the
life.
thing is, like obviously my case is a little different because I didn't know, so I had nobody who would stick up in school. But like I said, my mother was okay, and I was quite a loud kid, like I didn't cry because my reaction when I feel attacked is I get aggressive.
Mm,
So in the same way that even that's not a correct way to be, to be so loud about
mm,
everything, like very hyper defensive. That's maybe it's
mm.
because how I grew up and I had to just stick up with it. I don't know, in the whole background, your reading part of it. So I'm not sure why, or maybe it's just I'm born like this. So I'm saying
Yep,
is that I guess like for a kiddie that's like this, it it's good that people know that, like, especially kids, obviously they have to learn and become adults and be able to fit in the world. So when they're young, they need support, teachers, whatever. And
mm.
that's but in the real life, nobody's gonna care if he's got whatever he
No,
has. He needs to be
no,
ready for that when he's an adult.
yes,
Like, and because
yep,
there's some outputs that you just have to deliver. And
yep,
so it's good that they do understand it better. And I think if the teachers start understanding maybe a little better, they can prepare you better so you don't have like some PTSD issues because later, like me now, I have different kind of issues I have to deal with still now. So
yep,
so if he can
yep,
get over that quicker, that's good. And I think, like you say, the more he knows now, okay, the more that people know, the better it becomes. I don't think there's like a state where that's correct. It's difficult
right,
because everybody's so
right.
difficult. Like if I look
It
at
is.
that, my kitty and me, we're different. Like, but we were
Yeah.
both autistic, but we both think differently. So, but
Mm,
it's becomes
mm,
a complicated story.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think your initial response to the even the name of the therapy, that it's behavior change. That I think that, like, I have behavior that's negative. For instance, one thing that I noticed once I was diagnosed with ADHD was that I would respond really impulsively to my husband and just react and get mad at him. And the only reason I figured out that I did this, even though he told me a lot of times, was watching my daughter do it to me. So my daughter would be tired, hungry, sensitive, and she would bark at me because of her inner kind of, what was happening in her nervous system. And I saw it and went, oh, wow, that's exactly what I do to my husband. And I want to change that behavior. So I think this is the key. And I think that at this age, my son is starting to learn this. He wants to change his behavior for what he wants out of it. When you're a kid, you don't understand that I'm not going to want my mom to wipe my butt every day. Like, you don't understand the connection. But as you get older, you start to want to change your behavior for an outcome. So I want to change my behavior to my husband because I do love him. I don't want him to feel scared of me. And so I'm teaching my daughter about her, reactivity. Why? Because not because I judge her, not because it's even wrong, but because I want her to be in relationships where it can be safe and the other person can be safe, and she's not always just reacting, but she learns to work on her side also. And then she also still will be reactive, and she also still has her symptoms. So I think what at this point with my son, the behaviors that I want to help him with now are the behaviors that affect his future, and what
okay.
he wants. And
Yes.
so, for instance, after school day, he's always tired. He doesn't want to go and practice soccer, but he wants to be a professional soccer player, so he says. So we try to help him to connect. Okay, well, you have to go back out and practice if you want that. And so I think that's part of it. I think, are we teaching kids behaviors that are going to help them or make us feel better? You know? For instance, like they greet adults
Yeah.
and say hi. And is that because we want them to do that or because that's for them? That's the questions that I think adults need to ask.
So on the question, something else like I just thought of it while I was speaking is that did the ever therapy, did they ever think or ask him like or figure out how he's behaving so that they can adjust, the outcome to that? Or did they just follow their system from their point of view? Like this is what must be done. So
Mm.
we don't care who you are or what you need or how you function or how your brain works. You have to do this. Did they look at it from that point of view?
Definitely. Ours did. It was very, very like holistic and safe. And it started from where he was and kind of in our daily life, the places that we felt kind of blocked. You know, for instance, for a while, he couldn't tolerate a bath. We'd put him in water and he would just scream. So the question wasn't what he's being naughty. It was like, okay, why is he not tolerating? What's the sensations he's probably feeling? You know, how can we meet him where he's at? Because he has to wash his body, but how can we meet him where he's at, have empathy, help him to calm down? So it was definitely all the goals were set on what he could do and where we saw the gaps, but also trying to understand what he was probably struggling to tolerate, why he was struggling with that, and really trying to have empathy for that and meet him where he was at, rather than just, ugh, he won't take a bath. And, you know, it makes me crazy.
So just
So I think it was a very kind way to see it.
okay. Now looking at the bath, how did he realize that a bath is something that he has to do? Did it come to him at some point?
I think we bathed my daughter every night, and then we bathed him every night, and then he wouldn't do it, you know, and then he hated it. So it was just like, well, what do we, you know, what do we do? And I think as time's gone on, we have listened more to his what he wants. But at that time, you know, I think that's also the thing. I think parents think I have to do it this way. My child has to bathe every night.
But
And my daughter loved it. You
yeah,
know, my daughter loved the
yeah.
bath.
But can I
And
just
so
go?
we just,
I'm very interested in this bath thing. This is my
hmm,
autistic brain zoning in, you know. Um,
let's go.
so my question was, did you figure out what was the reason he didn't like the water? Was it too cold? Was it the feeling funny or what? And at like I don't know, like at what point did he realize that bathing is something he has to do, or like did he realize that he wants to do it? Like I mean, we bought to get clean. Does at what point? I know you asked me a question about the
Good
dentist,
question.
and I think
Hmm.
the only reason I really started to brush teeth was I didn't want to have pain. Okay, so that made me do it. So, like, I'm just curious, what was it that he didn't like? Did you figure that out? And when did he realize that he thinks bathing is something he must do? Because I think, from my point of view, I tend definitely only do things I feel I need to do, or if I feel that if I don't do it, someone else is gonna beat me. I'm gonna get a worse reaction, so I'll take the easy way. So if someone's gonna hit me or do some crap to me, I'd rather bath than get hit. So
Hmm.
just curious, what did you pick up with him?
Great question. I think what he didn't like is he didn't like changes, so he didn't like any kinds of transition. So I think it was, you know, it was always in the evening, so he's always more tired. He had to take off clothes, you know, it's probably often cold, and then get in water that was warm. But it's like the change of sensations, the changing out of clothes. It was a lot of kind of labor, you know, and I think he just didn't like it. It wasn't like the water was unpleasant for him. I think he just didn't like it. And I actually can't remember how we slowly transitioned into it to where he could tolerate it. I think it was at first just trying to do it as quickly. So probably was like a wash rag and just washing him and then getting him out. So it's like this is a task you have to do to clean, but like let's just lessen the pain or lessen the things that's making you feel intolerant. Um, it's hard to remember the exact steps we took because very quickly it turned into a time where my son and daughter would sit in the bath for a long time every night. So very soon it changed to where he was slowly brought into. So this is where he always had an emotional sensitivity and he had a desire to be a part of something because she loved sitting in the bath. So she was sitting in the bath playing with toys and singing. And so once he could kind of tolerate it, because I think at first it was so shocking, once we could kind of get it so it wasn't so almost like painful for him, he like hated it. Once we could get help him to tolerate, then I think he started to see, oh, she's enjoying it. Maybe I'll try it. And he slowly just very quickly he loved baths and he would sit in there for a long time and they would sing together and they would play together and he would laugh. I think it was he hated transitions and
Okay.
I think it was the getting out of clothes and getting into water. It just was shocking and it wasn't what he
Mm,
wanted to do.
because
But
yeah,
slowly he was able to tolerate it and then he loved it.
yeah. So it's like for me to understand things, I always have to try to climb in there and look at it from my point. Okay. So So initially, he didn't like transitions because something different is puts him into a fear factor, like, oh crap,
Mm,
what's gonna happen? It's like an unknown. But then he realized that it wasn't so a big thing. I think it's the same with me. When new things come, I'm like allergic to new stuff because I have extreme black and white, stupid
mm-hmm.
feeling. So it's like, oh, new thing must be negative. I'm scared now. So, but once you
Yeah.
do it, it's okay. Did you ever ask him now about the ball thing, if he can remember why he didn't like it and why he decided it's okay? Did you ever ask his opinion on that?
I haven't. It would be great. I hadn't even thought about it till, we're talking in this conversation. I should ask him, but he has very little memories of it. And probably part of it is it's like this folklore in our house almost, of we talk about it a lot that he did have it. We talk about the things that were hard for him and how he worked so hard to get to where he is now. So it's almost like this story of our house that he couldn't tolerate these things and then slowly all together we
Okay.
made this journey together to where he is now. So
Do
he
you,
doesn't really have a lot of remembrance of those times.
okay, but what about the new thing? Something if it's something new that he's struggling with, and that do you think this approach might work? Just ask him, like, find out exactly what it is that making it difficult, and maybe explain logically why you think it might be a good thing to do. What do you think of that kind of approach to new issues that come up?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. I think he wants to have a voice. I think he wants to be understood, which I think is really important. And I think at times we didn't always know that. He wants to say why he doesn't want to do it, or say why it's uncomfortable, or say why he doesn't like it. And I
Yeah,
think if he gets to talk about it, it really does help.
but what
And so it's a good reminder to
some
just keep
some
doing that.
but it could be that he also has alexithymia like me, and it's difficult to explain why you
Mm,
don't like something. In a sense, that is something that maybe that's my lucky spot, because I will ask people, like lots of questions, but I would like definite kind of specific answers. And then people say, but what if we start asking you all these questions? Are you gonna, do you like it? And then they'll start asking me all kinds of questions. And I'll get all more and more excited the more questions they're asking. I don't have no problem with answering straight out. And because they
mm,
think that is negative to them, but maybe they feel negative because they don't really know why. Because I've spent a lot of time, like, I know why I like to go to the beach and why I don't like to do some other things, like, quite clearly, because I've thought about it a lot. So maybe if you start talking to him, he might not exactly know, but you know it's negative, but maybe he won't be able to vocalize exactly what it is.
mm,
But I still think, even if you just let him think about it and ask, that he knows that you are thinking about it, and you want his, opinion of why he don't want it, and then it might give him kind of a, what's that, empowerment or something. What do you think? That's my
mm.
theory.
I think that's a really good theory. The empowerment is the key, is that you have a voice and you get to say something also. Because it's not stupid how you see things. It's not stupid how you feel things. It's not, I don't want to ever dismiss that. I think that's
Yes.
the problem. We often do things we don't like to do. It's just when we feel dismissed that it hurts.
And also, my wife said, like, she's a nurse, and when she worked, like, if someone says they have pain, you have to give them pain tablets, even though it might be a micro scratch, that someone else can have a broken arm and feel no
Hmm.
pain. But if someone says they have pain, you must respect that. That's real to them. We can't
Yeah.
judge what is real or not to them, so we have to treat that. That's tough.
Mm,
So I think, like, with me, and I see now with your kitty, he just, why didn't you get in the water? Well, I don't like water, don't like change, whatever it was. It's like,
mm,
and other people will say, wow, we also have dislikes in that, but the extent is something different, like, huge difference, the extent. So I think that's important for me, for like neurodivergent people, is that that our extent is different, and should be taken
mm,
seriously. Although even those things, it looks as if, like, I'm saying that the world must just cater for us. No, it's just when you're a kid, you have to cater for your kids, for any kind of kid, because you still need to teach them. So you need to assist them so they can grow up in the best way possible. So as educators, we should be aware, and then we can take care of those things. And once you are adult, then then obviously you have to adjust, and do stuff like my mother said, you must shit in the toilet. I always bring that up.
Yep.
Can't just shit in a corner. I mean, that
Yep.
doesn't work. There's certain, and it's logical, and logical makes sense. So I think that's my kind of, I would like people to see
Mm.
that it's not that we are just looking for crutches. No, it's just
Mm.
we want to be efficient. Everybody, the world
Mm.
functions with all of us. Like
Yeah.
we need our crazy
Mm.
hypersensitivity, because that makes us allergic to change. And when the change comes, we will try to find a solution, where somebody who's not so allergic to change might not give
Mm.
a crap, and everything will remain the same. So,
Right.
so
What would you say are ways that people can um, help, someone who struggles with change or struggles with new things? What would your recommendations be for helping them to, to tolerate it or to, I mean, take the bath, for instance. Like, what do you think? How do you get someone who feels like can't do something to then be able to try it?
the thing is, if we have a lots of time, then you can kind of, maybe my theory is, for me, it's like, if I understand why I'm doing something, then it's easier to try it, even
Mm-hmm.
though it's a difficult new thing. So I need to know why I'm doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, I think, like, if it's a neurotypical, I mean, a kid who's like on the spectrum, and they can think and reason in general, then it's possible that they can understand. But of course, if you have kids that don't understand, then you have to use totally different approach, and that could be much more complicated.
Yeah.
Like, because as we know, autism is a spectrum, because they have some with high IQ and some with low IQ. So
Yeah.
if you have one who's very low IQ and doesn't understand why you're doing stuff, then you have to con them into it in some way, like a bribery, I think, because
Yeah.
like a small
Yeah.
kid, I think that's what my mother did. But some things with me, I have to kind of bribe me into it.
Yeah.
So
We did a lot of that.
yeah, yeah. So I think, like, basically understand the reason why, and then it's easier to adjust to the change. But if it's a kiddie that's small, then maybe need a little bribery into it.
Yeah.
So
We bribed a lot when they were young.
I mean,
How
you do
motivating is it for you? Like if your kids want something or your wife is asking you for something that you really don't want to do, how do they kind of pull you in?
me
Um, yeah.
now. You're asking now.
Hmm.
Oi.
Hmm.
It's difficult to talk so generally if I don't have an exact example, but hmm, if I don't want to do something, how they pull me in? I'm difficult. Ha, very difficult. They always say I'm like the extreme autistic dude, because all these tests I score like right on top. So
Mm.
for me, yo, mostly if like I say, if I see a reason for it, if it's a good reason, I can kind of work into it. They have to get me with a logic and slowly get it into my head that, okay, there's a reason why we're doing it. Otherwise, because if their logic, if they don't give me logic and they say, just I have to do this now, then my logic is saying, no, that's crap. I don't do that. And I'm like stuck in that. And the thing is, because this sounds arrogant, I do have a kind of a quite a above average IQ, I think. Some people have said this. So what happens is my logic tends to override, like in general,
Mm.
most people's logic. So like if something comes that to me seems illogical, I'm not doing it. So for them
Right.
to convince me, they have to slowly get me to see that and tell me, okay, let's look at it from, and I do now, because I'm an adult, I do kind of, I try at least sometimes. I don't know how accurate
Yeah.
this is, but I try to listen to their thing. But I'm not stubborn. As soon as if their logic makes sense, then I accept it immediately. It's like, oh, okay, then I'll do it, no problem. So I think for me, like I said, to pull me in, I need to see their logic, and it needs to
Yeah.
make sense. Then it comes easy. But I don't know if this is for generally for everybody, so
Yeah.
I can't
That's
say.
helpful. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we were trying to talk our son into going with us to, a tap dance competition. And he's like, I don't want to. And the reason is, because we're family and because we do things together and, this is what we're doing together. And he gets really frustrated with that. So
But
it's,
why do
it's
we have to do stuff together? I mean, we don't always need to do everything together. Does he say
I
that?
know. Yeah. And it's
Oh,
like, actually true. I don't
My
know why we
my
force the
daughters
behavior.
used to say the same thing, like, yeah, I don't want to do jujitsu. I said to them, well, you go to school, don't you? Do you want to go to school? Someone else has forced the whole world to go to school. So in this family, I decide now that this is something we do in this family. Finished.
Yeah.
We learn to jitsu together. There's no, you don't have choice in this. It's like you don't have a choice to eat like non-pork. Okay, in this family, nobody eats pork. You have no
Yeah.
choice in that matter. So there's just some things that there's no, you don't have a choice in. It's illogical to you, but it works like this, and this is part of it. If you don't want to
Yeah.
do that, there's going to be big problems because if you want to
True.
eat pork, how are you going to get pork? You're going to
Yeah.
buy pork. I'm going to stop it. I'm stronger than you. You know, it's not going to happen. So same with the
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu. But what we did do eventually was, if like with your tap dancing, he don't want to do that. My one daughter eventually said she doesn't want to do athletics anymore, but she likes rock climbing. So we said, okay, the jiu-jitsu will stay. You will always do that because that's our family thing. I said to them, imagine like later when you're big and you find out I taught other people, grappling, and then they're gonna say, Papi, why didn't you teach me? Then I'm gonna say, well, you didn't want to. I mean,
Mm.
they will say, well, but I was a 3-year-old kid. What choice did what you could have overpowered me? So
Yeah.
you have to know that there's something good for
Yeah.
them, like,
Yeah.
and then keep
Yeah.
it going. But still, I think like my kitty later could do rock climbing eventually.
Mm.
So like give him the option, like maybe, yeah, you can do
Yeah.
something else like soccer, like that's what he likes.
Mm.
And maybe
Yeah.
eventually he doesn't want to do the tap dancing when he's older, then okay, as long as he's doing something else. You also have to think why is it that you do tap dancing as a family? Because I had my
Yeah.
reason for doing jiu-jitsu for my kids was I thought it was a very practical thing, like in
Mm.
self-defense and discipline for them to learn. So you kind of have to, if you can get, I don't know what's your reason for doing the tap dancing. So if you have, you
Yeah.
can, if you can get that.
It's supporting each other, I think. So
So
sometimes we do just say we have to, and then sometimes we say, okay, you don't have to.
okay, so if you want him to learn support for the family, then maybe you can do it in a different method or in a different
Mm.
activity if
Mm.
that's the
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. That's
Yes.
good.
So overall, ever like I say, there's like if you're too much like a circus and too much punishment, because that's what they did. Like he cried while and he vomited while he was eating yesterday. That's crazy. No, I think I couldn't do that. So, but yes, there are things that he needed to learn, like
Mm.
put on shoes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know what is the institutions how they do it nowadays because I don't know. But sometimes I wonder, is it actually all that stuff necessary that we think is necessary? Like, do
Yeah.
we need to shake hands or greet and say hello or wear shoes? Why? What's it? In the end, we want to like. Why do we do all these things? Is to fit in society, but we also need to also just make some money and eat some food and buy some
Yeah.
stuff. So how can you? This school is not the only way just to do that, you know,
Yeah.
but to get a qualification so you can be a service provider. I mean, that's what school is about. And we put so much time and effort into that in kids. Gee, this is crazy because the world is like a functioning factory and we need to fit nuts and bolts in everywhere. And that's our paranoia. So I think if we can look past that as
Yeah.
parents and think that there are maybe different ways and kind of look at the kid and see what they can do and then we will find different ways and then we wouldn't need to follow all this dronal stuff. You can hear
I
my
agree.
annoyance to the whole system.
I agree. And I think we need people in every part of society that think differently and that don't just conform and then don't just say, did I do it right? And they see things differently. In order to solve the world's problems, we have to have people who think differently and feel the world differently. So I think we're missing out on the fullness of what we can become as a people. So I think it's important too.
I think I know this is a different topic, but I think the people like right on top don't care about the world really. it's like humans are on is it nepotism? Is that it? Where you just take care of the people you know. So those in
Yep.
power always keep the power to themselves and their friends.
Yep.
And that's it. That's the main thing going on. So we should like from the lower level figure out what we want and fit, maneuver into it. Like I did engineering, and to me, what I learned there was basically like how you can find easy ways of using your resources to achieve something. That's it. That's what I learned to like flow through the system. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that works for everybody. I think that works for autistic guy because we don't follow the rules, so we need to flow through the rules. Whereas there's a lot of people that like the rules and want to be, enforcing the
Yeah.
rules and be
It suits
drones.
people. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
lots of
It's true.
them. So we
It
can't,
suits some people.
yeah, so we just need to, for me, like, I don't think of the whole world. I just think of how I can make me and my kids and people I know's world, function a bit better. Because
Yeah.
I don't have the influence to influence the world. I just can influence like around me. So I
Yeah.
just I just think
Ultimately, that's all of us. We can only influence those right around us. That's true.
yes, but some people have much more influence than others. Animal Farm, that famous book. I don't
True.
even know it. So
Yep. Yep.
some animals are more equal than others. Always remember
True.
that. I never liked English, but that was the only thing I remember.
It's
So,
good.
so yeah, so that was interesting. It's actually more positive than I thought. Initially, I thought you, Aber and Curing, and what the crazy thing that
No,
went through.
I agree with you so much, and I've learned so much, and I want to keep learning, and so I think your perspective is really helpful.
Yeah, so yeah, and I can open up my brain a bit because I'm like stuck in my own world. I don't know if you noticed that.
We all are, and so that's why we need people that will, help us see different things. So it's good. I love talking. Let's keep doing it.
Yes, so cool. I think
Okay.
that topic is is
Check.
is checked.
We solved it. We solved it. Well, thank you so much, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, awesome. I enjoyed that.
Okay. Me
Thank
too.
you. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Mohammed. Bye.